Welcome back to the
Good.
show.
Good to be here. Welcome
All
back,
right.
everybody.
I think we have an achievement unlocked for 2 back-to-back shows.
Yeah, I think that is a first.
All right, let me just get my stuff ready. So, welcome back. This show is hosted by Luke and myself. We're the creators of Burn Coin, the first burn coin. I'm sorry, the first burn pool for the Koinos blockchain. Today we have a special guest, Koinos CEO Andrew Levine. He'll be joining us and giving us a rundown. We had a new posting by him with some updates with Koinos, especially with the snapshot. So you can follow us at Luke M. Willis or at Queasy He or at Andrew Arkey at Koinos Network. We'll post all these links out for you guys to check it out. We're going to be doing a lot more shows running up to the snapshot date on October 31st. And this show is going to run about 30 to 45 minutes to allow people to come and watch us later on. So Andrew just popped in. Let me get him up on video and we'll be ready to go.
And if somebody in the chat could just give a wave to show that you can hear us and see us and Andrew when he gets in here, that would be great.
All right, Andrew, we see you on the screen. How you doing?
Good. Can you hear me?
Perfect.
We can. Welcome, sir.
Yeah,
There we go.
Thanks for doing this.
Absolutely.
All right.
All right.
Well, welcome everybody. So yeah, as Quee said, we're getting going. This is the second stream in 2 days, so we're going to be doing more of these leading up to mainnet. Twitter links we'll share out. And for today, we wanted to kick off talking about the Medium article that you posted today, giving an update on leading up to mainnet and what's going on. So there's a lot to unpack in there, and I'm sure a lot of other things that had to be left out for brevity. But one of the main things that got mentioned was that there was a previous update where you said that there would be at least a month between the snapshot on October 31st and the mainnet launch. But now it sounds like you're going to shorten that window. So narrowing in on a mainnet launch date, but nothing announced yet to that end. Do you want to add any color to that?
No.
All right.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, nothing else to announce there. Yeah, to be honest, that statement was as much a misstatement as anything.
Sure.
What we kind of meant was a month between the announcement of the snapshot and the mainnet, but I don't know if it was the editing process or what. But it kind of morphed into something else.
Sure.
So yeah, there was no real reason for it. I didn't know quite how to explain that, but and also things are so dynamic for us from week to week, month to month. Honestly, it's hard to even remember what was top of mind at the moment, but when looking back at that and looking at where we are now, it was just like, oh, there's no need for that,
right.
for that long of a window. So yeah, there's really no need for much of a window at all. But yeah, no further comments on when that will launch.
Sounds good.
Awesome.
Looking forward to it.
I also noticed that you guys started posting out a screenshot of koinosblocks.com where we're showing some testing. Roman, one of the developers of the AssemblyScript SDK, a great tool to use if you're developing smart contracts.
The only developer.
The only for AssemblyScript at least, which is probably the choice to use right now. But he posted out his Firehose tool, and it seems like he's been basically blasting the test net with transactions. So some pretty cool numbers out there. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's great. It's totally borking the P2P, and people are forking everywhere. but that's exactly what we want to be doing right now. So, I mean, it's great. Those numbers that he's putting up are great. I personally think that if you do the math on that throughput, I mean, there's no reason to be cagey about it. We're talking 100 plus transactions per second. To me, that's actually a fairly decent place to start out as far as the mainnet's concerned. I'd be actually very open to hearing feedback from the community about that. There are things that could be done to increase the throughput. This is fairly unoptimized, but I actually think it's a good place to start as far as throughput goes. It puts us in the top tier, but it also keeps the blockchain in a fairly healthy state, because I think that the thing that people tend to underestimate the most or underappreciate the most about throughput and blockchain speed and all of that is that any way you slice it, the more transactions you process, the bigger your blockchain is going to get, and the longer your reindex time is going to get. And so then you got to focus on the reindex time and keeping that accessible, right? Like if it takes 6 months to reindex the chain,
Right.
That's really a huge problem for the blockchain, and not a lot of people get that, because not a lot of people, are developers, are running nodes, are block producers, but they would know it when it starts to go bad. It would have a lot of knock-on effects. I mean, it's really bad. And so anything we can do to prevent the blockchain from getting too big too fast, like if it's meeting the needs of people, like the thing that I always go back to when people ask this question of throughput and lots of related questions is when you have that person who has that valuable transaction that they want to process, can they push that transaction? Can they push it without paying a fee? And does this all feel like really nice?
Right.
So I've got this like valuable thing I want to do. Right? I don't know what it is because the dApps don't exist yet, right? But maybe it's a CoinDX trade or whatever, right? Like I have a CoinDX trade. This is a great trade. Can I push it for free? And does it feel good? Like, are 1 million coin being locked up or just a few coin getting locked up, right? Like that's the user experience that we as a community want to scale, in my opinion. And so that's what we should focus on. And so I expect that if we launched with the level of throughput that we're seeing now, we would be able to deliver that user experience for a time, right?
Yeah.
In my opinion, if we deliver that user experience, there's going to be growth. And so that's when we're going to start to run into situations where it's like, okay, well, now we need to increase the throughput. But that's what you want to do, is you want to increase the throughput when there's basically market demand for those solutions. Does that make sense?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. In fact, while running the node, the resync time can be, I think I'm doing about 10 hours on a very simple machine at home. And I can imagine that if your block size was larger, your blockchain size was very, very large, you could spend easily a couple of weeks resyncing. And that would be a very terrible thing for people who are running nodes at home. So it does hit close to home, especially if you're running nodes right now and you're resyncing and getting updates. In fact, I think Koinos released a couple updates to the microservice without a hard fork. So it's showing movement forward without having to put any unnecessary strain on the actual user running the nodes.
Yeah, I think the messaging in the article really highlights the upgradability of Koinos, because with other blockchains, you launch with 150 transactions per second, and you got to live with that for a while. But Koinos has a lot more tools to be able to adapt and build in faster transactions time, better reindexing time without hard forks, and just kind of easier rolling out of nicer features for developers, for node runners, and for end users as well. So I think that I agree. I think that 150 transfers per second, which is what we were seeing, is a pretty good starting point. I think that gives us enough room for people to come in and start using the blockchain, and then I'm sure we'll have to adapt over time, but that's a good place to start.
Right. And you want that, right? You want this kind of market-based pressure, which is it's a tough conversation to have, especially to developers who are like, my app is going to be great and it's immediately going to have a lot of usage. So you need to have a lot of throughput. And to be like, that's great, I hope you're right, but what we really want to be doing is scaling valuable transactions. And if you're pushing thousands of useless transactions to our chain, that does nothing for us as a community, right? So like the design of Mana is really about smoothening the market experience of balancing user experience and the cost of developing scaling solutions, right? Like I feel like a common thread of our conversations has been like, there's no such thing as magic. None of this is magic, right? There's physics, there's network resources, and there's a limited set of network resources, and we can't just invent it out of thin air. There's no magic like scaling solutions, proof of history, bull crap, right? It's all, we're all dealing with the same constraints here. And in order to scale those limited resources, just as was the case with the internet, it takes time, it takes resources, it takes capital. And so how do we start with what we need and then bring in the capital and grow kind of responsibly, deliberately, have everything in lockstep where we're demonstrating our value proposition to the market, developers are coming in, users are coming in, capital is coming in. Now we're taking these things, we're developing scaling solutions so that we can make it faster, we can improve these technologies. I mean, to give you an idea of how kind of off base most people are in their analysis of these systems, in all likelihood, what the initial scaling solutions with the highest return scaling solution will be is custom WASM development, custom like WASM VM development, iterating and improving on WASM VMs, because that's where the bottleneck is.
Right. That's also at it's a really new technology. In fact, I think WASM right now it's at its first version, so there's a long way to go with improving it.
Oh my, totally. And in the blockchain space, it's still fairly new, Right. So the other thing I just wanted to dwell on for a moment is that I reference in the update as well, is taking a second to give credit to the team that we never, I think the only discussion we ever had about performance specifically was the decision to use WASM. And the decision to use WASM wasn't about performance specifically, but it was all these benefits to using WASM, one of which is that because it's an assembly-like language, that it's going to be performant, and it's probably going to be about as performant as is possible to get within a virtual machine. And then that's it. We have barely done anything else specifically for performance, and yet the performance of the testnet is what it is. I think that's an incredible testament to the engineering talent of the team, that they focus on building right. We focus on building right, solid engineering principles, and we have faith that when you build something right, when you engineer something properly, that it exhibits the behaviors that you want from a well-designed system, like high performance. But like, it might sound bad to say, hey, we didn't design this thing to perform well. But I think it's such a credit to the team that we didn't design it to perform well. We designed it to be upgradable, and yet it is high performance. That's incredible.
Absolutely.
Very cool. So, one other thing that was mentioned in the article was the test of governance, which is really like, this is what we're talking about with upgradability, the ability to come in and just propose a governance upgrade to a system contract to get performance or to get whatever the needed thing is at the order of the day. So there was a successful test of governance on testnet, and yeah, we all voted for it, those of us that were running nodes. Any reflections on that process and how it went through?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it was fairly uneventful, which is great.
That's what you want.
Yeah. I think we kind of forgot about it until it was about to go through. I'm like, oh my God, is it going to go through? Did they vote for it? So yeah, it went smoothly. One of the things we've been talking about a lot internally is that it very much feels like we are over the hump in many ways. And it feels like we've been running uphill for the last 2.5, 3 years now. And it's starting to feel now like we're on the other side, we're running downhill. And I think that because of the design of the system, right, with the governance system being a smart contract, it was fairly trivial to actually implement it and implement it properly. It was fairly trivial to set up the testing for it. And it performed as expected. So, you know, there's no panic. There's no, oh crap, we have to go back to the beginning and redo everything. And this is more or less what we've been seeing in general as we continue building. It's not to say that there aren't problems cropping up, but it's definitely a night and day experience when compared to what it was like to develop on Steam, for example, which was just a never-ending nightmare that basically felt like it got harder the more you worked on it. Which it'll be interesting to see. Like, I don't know if it's still going to feel this way when mainnet launches. I think it will, but it certainly feels that way during testnet, where the longer we work on it, and in no small part to the amazing contributions from community members like Julian, like Roman, right? Building these tools that are making everybody's lives easier. Like, what made working on Steam so hard was that we had to do everything ourselves. And so that's why we designed Koinos, so that other developers would actually, and engineers would actually be able to build the tools. And thankfully, these fantastic engineers and developers, yourselves included, have stepped up and contributed in ways that make our lives much, much easier and continue to make our lives easier. And ultimately, when mainnet launches, we expect fairly soon to be able to shift focus almost entirely to developing developer-focused products that enable them to build incredibly valuable applications on Koinos, because the blockchain, the mainnet won't require such active development by us.
Right. Yeah, I think that's 100% true. I know Julian did some work on Steam back in the day. I don't know what Roman's done before Koinos, but I'm sure it's something blockchain related since he's such a powerhouse.
I don't think so. I actually
No?
don't think so. I think this is really his first blockchain work. What he said to me, not to blow up Roman's spot, but it was something like, I took a look at Ethereum, but then I learned about fees and I just lost interest.
Yeah.
And that was just one of countless stories I heard like that really validated our thesis, where I was just like, since we've started on this journey, it's been shocking to me to find how many people were like, I heard about Ethereum and then I learned about fees and then I just went back to work, Like, wow, that's just so on the nose for our thesis.
Yeah.
It wasn't too long ago.
Go ahead, Gui.
I was going to say, it wasn't too long ago when Roman tweeted out that he was looking to go full-time to blockchain and wondering where he should start. And obviously, Koinos is a really good place to start because at the beginning of this entire journey, which I think goes back to October 13th, 2020, is when the blockchain was first kind of made public with the GUI miner. But ever since then, the community has always been very involved with the development of it. And I think it sets a precedence to where we're going to go moving forward. Obviously, it's very much unlike a recent blockchain, one blockchain that recently got posted out there called Aptos, which, considering the fact that there are, quote unquote, 350 plus developers on there for a blockchain that's been working for 4 years, they don't have that whole community development process. That's very much made by people who were paid by Atmos, so Aptos. So it's a different world entirely, different community entirely.
And going back to what I was saying before about what these guys have managed to do, and what we have all managed to do, we don't just have community involvement. Like, it would be one thing if we had community involvement and our chain was half as good, or a tenth as good. They've got 300 engineers. We've got 3. So what? We should be 1/100th what they are? We're better.
Right. Absolutely.
We're way better. And like, I don't know if it's a knock against them or a credit to us, but something isn't adding up with these people, man. You look at Solana, you look at Aptos, and you just wonder, Michael, Steve, and Nathan are good, but they're not superheroes. I mean, they're human. They're great.
No magic.
Yeah, there's no magic, but I think it comes down to extreme talent. But then, dedication, focus, alignment towards a common mission, and that extends to the community of people from, just advocates, people like Glenn Mills who are just out there talking about Koinos, all the way up to dApp developers like yourselves, tool developers like Roman. We are all very aligned around a common mission. And I think, we beat this drum so much, but the decision to focus on being free to use as our core value proposition, I think it really gives us a solid foundation and keeps us on track and working together, because at the end of the day, we're all looking to deliver a fundamentally different user experience to the market. And that's a really strong thing to always be able to fall back on, So And I think that we're a community of genuinely good people, and that's not something that should be understated or underappreciated. When I look at these other projects, I don't think you're all good people. I don't think you're all in it for the right reasons. And so you're probably backstabbing one another, bickering, and not aligned. And that probably leads to all kinds of bad outcomes at every level. I've heard it said that, a product is an expression of the organization that builds it. And so if the organization is in disarray, if the organization is filled with bad people who aren't happy and who aren't working together towards a common goal, then the product will be shit. If it's a shitty organization, it will be a shitty product. And honestly, right. I think that's what's happening there. And I think that we have a great organization, and I don't mean Koinos Group, though I would like to. I mean specifically the community. We have a great community. I'll take some credit for helping to build it and get it started. But I think that the greatness of the product of what we have is an expression of how great our community is.
Right. Talking about developer experience and just making everybody's lives a lot easier. One of the things that is, I think, really, really unique with Koinos at a blockchain level is that there's now going to be a smart contract naming service, which is a first. Could you elaborate on that? That seemed to be an idea that kind of Luke Willis brought up on Discord, and now is being adopted for mainnet.
Yeah, thank you for prioritizing that.
Yeah, well, you made a very compelling argument. Yeah, we are nothing if not susceptible to highly rational argument. Did you say it was a first of something? You mean a first on like Koinos?
I think it would be a first to name a smart contract so that you don't have to call the address by itself. It exists as an ENS on addresses, but on Ethereum, addresses and smart contracts are two separate entities.
Right.
So
I think
this would be the first.
It's more that because Koinos has system contracts and not just like system functions that are built into the monolith of what the blockchain is, having names for things is kind of a given when everything's built into the system, because you just reference it as system whatever, right? But on Koinos, it's a contract, so you really need like an identifier that's reusable, so you know what the coin contract is and what the proof of burn contract is and all these things, in case the addresses change through governance and upgrades. So
yeah, that's an interesting point. I guess that's why I hadn't thought of it as a first, because I was like, I think that what we're going to see is we're going to see Koinos making a lot of firsts. I think it's going to be fairly common for Koinos to be the first of a lot of things, because of its unique architecture and things like that. It already is, and we just choose not to highlight it. One of my pet peeves is when people highlight firsts that nobody cares about. So I don't know if this is a first that people would care about, but I guess it will be. But what's really cool about it, so Luke outlined why this is an important issue. I think what really drove it home for us was we've been thinking about it as we generally are biased to do as blockchain developers. And from our perspective, it was like, this will make our lives easier, right? So the short version for anyone listening who doesn't want to read the update or whatever is just that, on Koinos, everything is a smart contract, and those smart contracts are all interacting with one another to give us the behaviors that we want while we use the blockchain. And they reference one another using addresses, which are long strings of letters and numbers. But because Koinos is upgradable, those addresses are going to change as we improve the system contracts. Now, the problem arises that when you, if we want to upgrade, we want to be able to upgrade pieces independently, but if they're all interlinked by these addresses, then if we update one thing, we got to update the other thing, and it actually makes the upgrade process a lot more cumbersome. And,
Right.
and you know, and we're all about upgradability, obviously, but this was a change that we could wait on, and add through an in-band upgrade because Koinos is so upgradable. What Luke pointed out was, hey, developers rely on these contracts too. And what if I don't want my contract to be upgradable? Or what if I don't want to have to upgrade it just because you upgraded something? Or allow me to paraphrase. I don't think that's exactly how you put it.
Pretty close.
But that's about right? That's the, was that a fair, and then it's like, well, I think one of the things I'm very proud of is our genuine commitment to developers, and how, it's one thing when something is going to make our lives harder, but when we hear like, oh, this is going to make developers' lives harder, that's when we really kick it into high gear and realize that it's an important problem that needs to get solved as quickly as possible. The really cool thing about the naming service is that, this isn't an example that we thought of when we designed Koinos, but it highlights what I think it gives a deeper insight into what composability is, why it matters, and what it looks like when it is done right within a platform. Because like I said, this isn't something that we thought about. But what we are going to do is implement a naming service for the system dedicated to delivering a system behavior, right? So none of the implementations will be application specific. And yet, an application developer will be able to come in, copy that code, and I believe almost exclusively by adding to it, can make it into an ENS style service on Koinos. And that is composability, where you're taking something that is part of the system, developed by the creators of the system or the system developers, and an application developers coming in, piggybacking off of that work, customizing it to their unique needs, and releasing it, and thereby gaining the advantages of higher security, lower effort, lower cost. I think that was a really awesome example of composability.
Absolutely. So we're coming up on time here. So there's a lot of great developer examples of things that have been built in the community. In that Medium article, we should share that link to the chat, and it's out on Twitter and everywhere. So if you haven't seen it yet, definitely recommend you go give it a read. We did have one question in the chat about centralized exchange listing. I know these things tend to be pretty cagey and pretty quiet in terms of the what can be shared from the team, assuming you have anything cooking behind the scenes, just because of non-disclosures and whatnot. But are there any updates or anything that you can share about the team's progress towards getting mainnet coin listed on a centralized exchange?
No, I have no updates there. I think something that is important for people to keep in mind is that we have done a lot of work. We have made a lot of sacrifices, and I'm speaking for both the Koinos Group and the community to release coin the right way, to release coin in a truly decentralized manner, and a consequence of launching Koinos truly decentralized, having the coin token being a truly decentralized cryptocurrency, is that it should not be deemed a security. And it would be very foolish for us to come all of this way and then do things that would risk the safety of that currency and the designation of that currency, as a truly decentralized currency. Let's get this thing out. Let's get it truly decentralized. Let's not look for cheap wins or things like that. We have a lot of exciting updates coming in the future. And I'm not just talking about the release of mainnet. That is just one small thing that's coming. There's a lot of exciting things in development that will help ensure the long-term viability of the Koinos blockchain. And I look forward to sharing those updates with you all in the future.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show, Andrew.
My pleasure.
All right, everybody. Well,
all right.
Thanks for coming.
As one last bit, just don't forget the snapshot date is October 31st or later. I'd like to look at the article, but for all intents and purposes, you should focus on October 31st. And what that means with the last statement that Andrew just made is that if you want to be involved with mainnet, it's best to acquire a coin now and then be included into Snapshot. And then you'll be able to use dApps as they come alive on mainnet. You'll be able to mine. You'll be able to use an internal exchange called CoinDX. You can join a burn pool called burncoin.com. All these things will be available to people on mainnet if you acquire tokens now and get included in the Snapshot. With that said, thank you, everyone. The show. Thank you, Luke. Thank you, Andrew. And any last thing you want to add, Luke or Andrew?
Nothing from me. This was great.
Awesome. Great. And we'll have another show coming very, very soon. And hopefully we'll get more guys from Koinos Group and the community to be involved. With that said, thank you and take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.